the Evolution Security Podcast. Here we are again for the Evolution Security Podcast. You've joined Eric and I, Eric Davis and Aaron Davis, the Tactical Twins. As far as I know, Eric, the only podcast with twin musicians on it, and that actually have a band within the podcast, the Tactical Twins. Now, Eric, it is good to see you. There is some different scenery behind you there. So I'm assuming you are, what do you call that? TDY?
Yeah, I am currently on the road here in Louisiana at JRTC. I'm supporting a unit here. By the time this airs, I will be home, which I'm really glad about because I'm really tired of this heat, man. It is hot as hell here, man. You know, it's been averaging over 100. It's, 103, 105 with really, heavy humidity. And, a bulk of my day is spent outside, with soldiers. And so, yeah, man, it's been, I'm reminded very quickly, about dealing with heat. But, it's one of those things you acclimate to it. And I've been spending a lot of time out in the heat, in North Carolina. Plus I've been, shooting out in the heat there too. So, I kind of feel like all my shooting in the heat there, for several hours at a time kind of really prepared me to be outside in this heat a little more than I've been used to recently. So yeah, I'm pumped, ready to get home to see my wife and my dog Brody and the other dog too, Daisy.
Your dog Brody and the other dog.
Yeah, the other dog. I'll be glad to see her too, kind of, sort of. I'm sorry if people get offended by that. I'm honestly playing. Daisy's coming around. She's a beagle. She's insatiable. She just nonstop just wants to get into stuff and, wants to bully Brody sometimes. Brody doesn't really take it after a certain point, but anyway, she's coming around. She's still a puppy. I think she's a year and a half old now, maybe just over a year. I should know. But I've said this before. She's the fastest dog I've ever seen, man. She's like a little mini greyhound.
Oh,
she
wow.
takes off in that yard. I've never seen a dog run so fast. So,
man, I love dogs, right? My last dog, a white bull terrier named Patton, of course, named after George Patton, who had one of probably the most famous bull terrier pet, Willie, named after William the Conqueror. Well, so Patton was just this amazing bull terrier, the sweetest dog in the world, could rip your arm off, but literally did not understand aggression. I'm talking about no aggression whatsoever. He would be in a world of hurt if any dog went after him. Just pretty amazing. Yeah. Being a bulldog. I
remember him real well. He was an amazing dog for certain. I was sad for you when he passed for certain. I am, I'm here and, I'll mention him now and here in a little bit during accountability, but Mark, he's a newer employee in my agency. He's doing excellent, former Marine, has real good work ethic. I'm actually down here providing him a little bit of OJT, and he's kicking butt in his own right. You know, came from the Marine Corps in the same skill set similar to mine. And yeah, so a little bit more about him here in a second, but he's been not laughing, but I've been telling him about, missing my dog. People in the
Oh
audience
yeah.
see there,
Oh
people
Brody.
laugh sometimes. My dog Brody, the pug, he's my most favorite dog. I miss that boy right now.
Oh, he's one of my favorite dogs for sure too. So I love getting to see him. Now, what I was going to say though is that after having dogs and then now having my cat Judah, it is so
It's
easy,
different, huh?
dude. That you leave that cat in the house for 3 days, you just put a bowl of food out and a bowl of water out, and of course his litter box, dude. He doesn't need anything. But
They
he's
are.
also
Cats are easy to take care of.
and people often, especially dog lovers, which I am, and of course was, you you kind of, a lot of people think, oh, they aren't that fun, they aren't really all that loving. I know that's true about many, but man, you just got to know what their actual love language is. And my cat's as loving as any dog I've ever had.
Oh,
Just
he's amazing. He's starting to come around with me.
yep.
He's not.
He was real confused when you walked in the door last year.
Yeah.
But hey, fun pet talk, man. I look at
I
that.
just have to show this. Have you
What,
ever seen this picture, Aaron?
what is that? He looks like some aristocracy or something.
Yeah. My wife got me this picture a while back. I always tell people it shows what we think of Brody. I call it Shakespeare Brody.
Oh, awesome. I love it. Awesome.
Anyway, enough about that. People are going, yeah.
Well, hey, before we go any further, we're just going to implore you to go ahead and go to iTunes, where you, of course, can subscribe to this show. Please do us a favor, rate the show, review the show, and then in any way that you can on Facebook, Instagram, your friends, word of mouth, share the show with your friends and family. We really appreciate that. It helps us a lot. Now, Eric, I think we're going to jump kind of into a little bit slightly different show than we've done in a little while, but we're gonna go kind of right into some accountability right off the bat, and I think we've got some fun stuff to talk about
Yeah,
here.
I agree, Aaron. And right before we go into accountability, I'm also going to implore our audience members again to go to our YouTube and subscribe. Let's try to beef up numbers. We need some help, folks. We always talk about it. We got a lot of downloads and a little teeny eensy number of even comparison in YouTube. So we could use some help there. So please go to YouTube, EvoSec USA, and you guys will find us. You'll see us there. Also on Rumble. So we need some help growing our video. And again, that does a lot have to do with us doing a little more short videos, which are coming. So yeah, let's carry on, Aaron. Let's do some accountability, man.
Well, so I don't believe we've talked about this yet, Eric, but so a couple weeks ago, I was finally released fully by my surgeon to do jiu-jitsu and to do competition and to get after it on the stuff and lift weights.
Awesome.
Everything, work into it, of course, but one of the main things I was so excited to do was get on the mats, and I can talk a little bit about that in a second. But also within that week, I went ahead and went to my first match in probably 4 or 5 months and had a blast. And then do just last weekend. So 2 weekends in a row, I've hit a match. And I got to the point to where, okay, I am going to spend most of my ammo going to competitions.
Yeah, I
the
remember
point
you saying that on the phone.
the
Hmm.
the point is, any of you that listeners that are from Oklahoma or nearby, the shooting sports culture in Oklahoma is awesome. There are probably 3 matches going on every single weekend within um, within less than 50 miles from my house. Usually, no less than 25 miles away from my house. So I have a lot of matches to choose from. Multiple clubs with Steel Challenge, multiple with IDPA, multiple with USPSA. And Eric, this was one I had no idea was even out there. And I had even been talking about, man, if I can't find one of these matches, I'm going to just start trying to pull one together myself, which I know would be a tall task, but you're long story short, there is an actual practical carbine competition every month at one of the ranges here too, and man, that got me pumped up. So
It kind of part and parcel with a lot of our discussions and my focus on carbine recently. Yeah, when you said that, it's real interesting that I had been thinking about doing the same thing. There's some 3-gun matches around my area in North Carolina, but I think you agree. I'm just not near as interested in doing 3-gun.
mm-mm.
Even though I got my new shotgun, maybe at some point I will, but I'm more interested in, if I'm going to spend some of that time, and I'd like to do it closer to my house, is mainly carbine. If I'm shooting I'm not even as nearly interested in running 2-gun, for that.
Yeah,
I'm interested in trying to get some carbine matches together.
yeah, and nothing against 3-gun. Yeah, I've just
No,
never really
nothing at
been
all.
interested in it myself. But running pistol alone, running carbine alone, or maybe 2-gun. But the cool thing is that this match, this particular match, it's at Oil Capital Gun Club in, I think it's close to Owasso, Oklahoma. It's basically IDPA with the carbine,
Yeah.
and they have you. I think there's some stages you can use pistol if you want to, but it's mainly focused on full on, you know, your rifle caliber AR or whatever type of rifle you want to run. But and then there's also a PCC division. So I just that's another thing. I've got no interest in getting a PCC because I've already got a handful of really sweet ARs,
Yeah.
and
Agreed.
so just I gotta just I'm not trying to rub it in or anything, but my fellow Okies, you know what I'm talking about. This is a great place to be a shooter, and
And Aaron,
so
and I don't mean to cut you off.
you're
And
fine.
we grew up. We grew up with. I mean, obviously it's exponentially bigger than it was when you and I got in IDPA back in the inception of IDPA. I mean, if you think about it, we started shooting IDPA the end of '98,
Mm-hmm.
beginning in '99, somewhere in there. And that, I mean, to my remembrance, IDPA started around '98, I thought. So I
Yeah,
may
I'm
be
not
wrong
sure
on that.
about that, but
So
well, so on that note, though, I do want to give a shout out, Eric. You'll appreciate this. So, a good old friend of ours, a gentleman named Eric Fusion, who is a great national level shooter,
yeah,
incredible masterclass
national champion.
IDPA and USPSA shooter still challenge, and he is also on Team Wilson Combat with Mike Seaclander. He built a range in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and he is putting on multiple matches now. I went to his place this last weekend. It's called the Guns of Glory match, IDPA match in this instance. Man, you can tell it's someone that is a high level competitor that runs that joint. Just a shout out to Eric. The point is that the stages were more like state or regional matches that I've been to, and there were shade canopies in every freaking bay, and
Nice.
just that single thing right there, it kicked it up a notch. But the stages were really challenging. Actually, the standard stage, which was all single hand shooting, boy, that was a butt kicker.
Mm.
I'm glad I did as well as I did in that one. But so what I've come to, like I said, I'm going to start going to a competition about every weekend. Whenever I can, I may hit a couple of competitions in a weekend to make up for maybe one weekend that I can't go. Like, for instance, there's not a match that I can make this weekend because the one I want to go to is a steel challenge on Sunday, but I'm playing guitar at church. So now, so let me make sure I'm mentioning everything. But what I'm learning from this, my biggest, and I'm sure a lot of shooters out there are going to go, duh, Aaron, but hey, just bear with me. I came away from this knowing that my primary focus to get better is to spend 80% of my shooting and dry fire on single hand shooting, because I'm shooting quite well in all the regular stages freestyle, but man, then my performance just is not even close to my freehand shooting. Again, I know that's common, but I have more opportunity there for increases by focusing on that. And Eric, I wanted to
Oh yeah,
tell you,
sure.
I had been running the 32 MOA dot or reticle on my Holosuns. So in this last match, I finally figured two things out. I was shooting okay first half of the match, but then the second half of the match, I saw, okay, I'm going to go back to my dot, doing an experiment, and I'm going to move aggressively, but I'm going to relax on the shooting portions. I shot a ton better. I kept, and this is where the experience is going to help me to get back into doing a lot of matches. You get a little hopped up. I wouldn't say I'm really that nervous, but you just go and you kind of outrun yourself, and that's what I've been doing. When I slowed down, to me, a perfect stage is a pretty quick stage with 1 or 2 points down. When it's all zeros, right, you're probably going too slow. So, and I think that's it on competition stuff.
Well, I'm real pumped for you, and I think I've said it before, and I still, feel that way. I'm a bit jealous, that there's that many
So,
matches there. I'm really glad for you. It would be awesome to be able to nearly say, man, yeah, what match is this weekend? Oh yeah, man, I'm headed there. It's just one of those things. There's a couple of IDPA matches that are fairly close to me, but again, I mentioned this not too long ago as well, is that I got to prioritize it.
mm-hmm,
Put it on the calendar and show up. It's clear that it's not that I'm not shooting,
mm-hmm.
but I think I'm missing an element in my shooting right now when I'm not competing, dealing with that little bit of match stress.
Mm-hmm.
But go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, I was just gonna say on this, our next guest is a great competition shooter and expert in the country on competition shooting. So I'm looking forward to picking his brain. And so we've got a couple of themes kind of going on right now, talking carbine and competition. You're digging into carbine. I'm digging back into competition. So that audience, you're gonna see some common themes here, at least for a little while.
That is usually how we operate. We've got, kind of where periodization comes in, what we're up to for a while.
Well, and Eric, I think one little last bit of accountability for me. So I finally got back on the mats last week, and right off the bat, injured my bicep.
Man, I dang.
And so what the deal is, it has to do with my neck that I've been dealing with for years. And speaking of, on that, digressing a little bit, man, my neck symptoms are almost all gone. I'm talking
Man,
about
that's great.
the last thing to go is always any nerve damage, numbness and stuff. That's almost completely gone. It is such a good feeling. But
Man, praise God, man. That's excellent to hear that.
well, but still, due to my neck problem and nerve damage that caused me to lose strength in my arms, it's caused a lot of tenseness in specific muscles. I'm not just I call it my bicep. Can't remember what my physical therapist called it, but it's a smaller muscle right on the other side of the bicep, and and some muscles right here in my forearm are connected and they're super freaking tight. So possible some fascia stuff going on in there, but it's all again because of my neck, and I'm having to really break that up. And so I started getting real frustrated on Friday and thinking, man, I'm just now able to get back, and here I can't even go to jits, you know. But I went and saw my physical therapist. She explained what was going on and gave me some massage techniques and stuff to help it out. And then I went last night and just took it real easy. I would like to say real fast that give a shout out to Matt Reyna. He's my jiu-jitsu coach. Man, his gym training ground is simply the perfect fit for me. They really, especially someone like me that's coming off of rehab on a few things, go real easy on me, and I've got good partners there. We can go real slow, and man, I had a great time last night, even though I didn't roll because I really can't yet. It was just a blast. And Eric, that I forgot to mention something here right off the bat, that in the last couple of years we have been working a partnership with Training Ground, and that's with Matt Reyna and then his partner Krista Koch, and they have started asking me to start doing some firearms classes for them. And so we have our first one in a while, which is October 28th. It is the Evolution Security Defensive Pistol I class. It's going to be in the Tulsa area. You can go on Eventbrite and search for that. Again, that's the Evolution Security Defensive Pistol I, and it's going to be a great class. It is, it is 100% tailored towards concealed carry problems. So what's up, bro?
Oh, I'm sorry, Aaron. You didn't have to answer my hand. I was just going to say I'll put that in the show notes. But you were
Okay.
saying about the concealed carry piece.
So, of course, we know that there are lots of great classes out there that, unfortunately, they're great classes and they're really informative and fun. We do it too. We like to go to more military oriented classes sometimes, but it seems to me, Eric, that a lot of what classes are available at the local level are are really not tailored towards the citizen carrying a pistol, and students go away not knowing really what they need to focus on. I mean, heck, one class I went to, taught by a police officer that was anti-competition, had us doing supine, um, shooting with a freaking pistol. It's like, dude, why even waste people's time with that? So, okay, long story short, it's going to be a good class focusing on concealed carry skills and what people really need to know in a self-defense encounter as a civilian. So check that out. Again, go to Eventbrite and you can find that. And we will also be offering a ladies only class too. We're working out the dates on that.
Aaron, can I also mention, since we're on the subject of classes, in November, I'm still negotiating the exact dates. But in North Carolina, outside of the Fort Bragg or Fort Liberty area, I'm going to be hosting our 16-hour course that we did back back in Tulsa with Matt and his crew back last November of all times. But anyway, I'm going to be doing that 16-hour course, which is our 8-hour defensive pistol curriculum, and adds our 8 hours of combatives with weapons integration, which is just a really, really good class for folks that aren't, let's just say they are a little bit timid towards jumping into an ECQC, with ShivWorks or whatnot, which they should, no matter how they feel about it. Everybody's kind of concerned about going to courses like that. But we like to think that our 16-hour class is a gateway to ECQC or any of the other courses with the ShivWorks collective folks.
Bro,
So yeah, be looking.
I'll just commend you, bro. Remember how much fun I had, as of course, me being the assistant instructor on that. You're the combatives guy in this group, and man, I was blown away. People should go take this class from Eric. He's my brother, he's my business partner, but I'm telling you, he puts on a great class for combatives and pistol. So yeah, go check that. When we announce that, make sure you try and get in that if you're in that area.
Thanks, buddy.
Well, Eric, I think now I'm about to jump ahead, bro. Are you gonna jump in on your accountability?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just gonna leave you behind there, bro.
If you're done,
I guess I can. Let me think. Make sure.
Yeah. So I guess moving on to my accountability. So being on the road, sometimes it's you can still absolutely get some excellent training in when you're outside of your normal environment. And frankly, if you aren't getting good training, you're not being creative enough. But there are times, number one, that sometimes I can't take a pistol with me. Sometimes I can. In this particular instance, I did have to leave the pistol at home for a couple of reasons. So I've been dry firing with my good old SIRT pistol, which, this is still an incredible tool. Of course, we use this for our combatives course. Some people.
And man, I was amazed how great running those SIRT guns for our matchups or evolutions in that class.
And of course, we have classes where we will use simunitions and or UTM as well. But right now we're trying to focus on getting people into those types of courses. So yeah, I've been dry firing with my SIRT pistol here in the hotel room. Incidentally enough, man, I've been really focusing on my strong hand shooting as well, working on my draw speed, trying to really continue to develop that sub 1 second draw. So yeah, getting after it on some dry fire here in the hotel. Another reason I like to dry fire when I'm in a hotel with my SIRT, and let's just face it, it is because even though I'm safe, you're safe, when we're dry firing in a hotel, it's best if we do it with a tool that isn't a live firearm, just for additional safety. I'm just adding that to the discussion. Now, as far as workouts, man, I got super lucky with having Mark along. As I mentioned, he's a former Marine. Semper Fi out there, Mark. And also Semper Fi to my son Nick. He's in his new location right now. But Semper Fi to Mark out there. He's been a really good training partner for me. We've been going in the early morning or early in the morning up before the enemy and getting our workouts done in the morning. Cause man, we've been working some long, hard days here. So we want to make sure that we guarantee we get that workout in. And incidentally, in the corner of the cardio room, there's a single mat. And I guess it's one of those, I don't know, maybe 6 feet by 10. It's not very big, but you know what, man, when I saw that there, I'm like, hey, I wonder if Mark will be interested in maybe doing some doing some jiu-jitsu and some combatives, and man, he was all game for it. And man, I've been telling him I've been getting a ton out of training with him. He of course had some combatives in the Marine Corps. He's a little newer to the higher details in jiu-jitsu, but he listens really well. And he's a young, athletic young man too, and he's very safe in his roles.
Rock on.
And doing a lot of Greco too, because that's something that I'd like to do a little more at my gym back home. And I spoke with Lee. We're going to start doing a little more of that, but been doing a lot of Greco. I've plugged in a little bit of blade work. This is a gear and mindset. I'm flashing my ShivWorks trainer.
Is that a disciple?
Yep, that's the disciple. And then of course I'm also, I've got my clinch pick trainer as well. Been taking those out a little bit too, and also got my knock knives too for a little more contact. So been pulling those tools out, and again, man, just really working some darn decent jiu-jitsu and wrestling. So again, shout out to Mark for that. Now, so also at the gym, man, I'm in a cardio cycle right now. So I'm really, really working on getting my VO2, up there a little better right now in this particular season in my training. Still doing strength and conditioning, but it's more like I'm doing a lot of kettlebells, body weight, chin ups. I like the goblet squats with kettlebells. So that's kind of what my workouts are looking like right now. Also been trying to get some two-a-days. We got the combative summit coming up. I'm, making sure my conditioning's on point. So Mark and I've been trying, if we have the opportunity during the day, and after work, to try to get in another workout too. So if we're doing jiu-jitsu in the morning, maybe condition or strength and conditioning later in the day. That's also been an additional tool I placed in the toolbox this week too. But man, I mean, really, I think we got some other stuff to talk about. I think that does it for me on accountability. Excuse me, I can't talk today. Accountability.
All right, let's take a quick moment to mention a couple of amazing American companies that we are proud to have as sponsors of our show. The first one is Origin. Origin USA is an American entrepreneurial success story. From offering the best Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gis, period, to their vast line of Jocko Fuel supplements, everything is the highest quality, American quality. Now check out their new line of RTX clothing that stands for Roll, Train, and Execute. They have shorts, shirts, and hoodies, all to keep you comfortable from the mats all the way to the trail. Now go to originusa.com and you can get 10% off on your first order. Now we'd like to mention Tenacor. They offer the most innovative purpose-built carry solutions on the market. My perfect carry setup is with my Boresight Solutions Glock 19 in my Velo 4 holster, held comfortably in place with my Zero belt. Nothing is as comfortable and nothing conceals as well as that setup. Now, for those of you that love your weapon-mounted lights, most of Tenacor's models come in WML variants, like the Sagex Lux 2, which has some of the same brilliant design attributes as the Velo 4. Go to Tenacor.com and get your everyday carry gear covered.
So yeah, man, let's go ahead and move on, man. What do we want to move into now?
Well, bro, I would like to take us into a little bit more serious topic here, and we'd like to
talk a little kind of polis.
Yeah, we're gonna get a little bit into some political stuff. So we hope you still stick around, because I think we've got some informative information here, and I think some good commentary on this. But first off, so we're gonna segue into talking about if you've been watching the news, and I'll just state it like this, and we can get further into it, which is the proposed 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Now, Eric, so there's really always been an elite ruling class, and of course, they're always usually self-appointed, or that they've grown into it through their family or riches, etc. But and again, and it's not just monarchy or dictatorships, right? It's there's been the articulation of basically city states and states where it's run by committees or legislatures or forms of republic, etc. But a lot of it just simply is simple tyranny, because people don't like to go along with what the elites want to prescribe for them. But so I wanted to just read a little bit from a really good book. This is Ameritopia by Mark Levin. Now, Mark Levin is one of the best commentators on politics, period. He can be hyperbolic, but these are important topics. So, he gets riled up, but he is extremely substantive. He's one of the most substantive commentators you can find, especially from the conservative side. Him and Victor Davis Hanson are about the top in my mind, especially for people that are able to communicate it to a level that isn't just straight up academic. But hey, they get pretty deep in it.
Yeah, they do, Aaron. If I can add a couple of comments to what you're stating there, Mark Levin is a practiced constitutional lawyer. Mm-hmm. He currently is not practicing that I'm aware of. So that's why I use the word past tense. But anyway, he said something not too long ago that I think's pretty crucial. And even in this medium that we're in, which has me on some different thoughts on maybe some ways that we can preserve some of this information, which more to follow on that. But, Aaron, he mentioned, he said, at some point this radio, he's speaking of himself, only so much will be retained. He said, really to put forth your ideas and your mark on this world, you got to write it in a book, and so of course he is in my opinion, one of the most important modern philosophers of conservatism, in the likes of, Locke and de Montesquieu, it's hard not to think of him as such an important scholar. So I just wanted to add that.
I agree. And so on that note, right. So this is the book Ameritopia. Okay. Now what's cool about this, if you want to get almost, for lack of a better way to say it, almost like a Cliff's Notes commentary on the argument between basically administrative tyranny and the freedom of the individual, this book is excellent, because he does lots of commentary on both sides, essentially.
You have either the philosopher kings or you have the free self-governing man.
So yeah, this book goes into commentary on Plato, on Thomas More, Thomas Hobbes, of course Karl Marx, but then on the other side, John Locke and Montesquieu and de Tocqueville. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing those guys' names correctly. It's been a while since I've read this, but it is an excellent commentary on that. But tonight we're going to focus on the philosopher king side, the ruling elites, and this is pointing back to, again, what we're talking about, this 28th Amendment and the way the elite ruling class thinks of us, the normal people, right? So in this book, I'm going to comment on a few things here, but essentially he goes down the list of a handful of philosophers throughout the last couple of thousand years, which Plato's Republic is a prescription of this type of quote utopia, which is impossible because it always involves coercion and subjugation. But so he wrote his book, his work, The Republic or Republic, in 380 BC. And then you had Thomas More's work, Utopia, from 1516. And then you've got Thomas Hobbes, his work, Leviathan, which was from 1651. So these arguments of elite ruling classes, again, I want to set this aside from monarchy, right? That's an age-old thing that this world has fought against. But we're talking about things that really do look similar to modern government. These philosophies are part and parcel with the types of government and our current government, in spirit and in almost lockstep sometimes.
Yep.
But I'm going to quote him real quick. This is Mark Levin. And again, I said these utopias they always have to involve tyranny, because the common people won't do exactly what these elites prescribe to them, right? So tyranny, broadly defined, is the use of power to dehumanize the individual and delegitimize his nature. And of course, what I think of when I see the dehumanize and delegitimize is the individual person's right to firearms and self-defense. Because if you're dehumanized by this tyrannical government, your right to self-defense is meaningless to them, right? So
Aaron, like a comment made, and I'm going to read it here in just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we are seen as individuals with fetishes about firearms, which we'll get into that here in a second.
That's a good insert, buddy. So again, I'm going to read a little bit from Mark Levin's Ameritopia here. His commentary on Plato starts out as: Plato was not the first, but he was among the most prominent of the earliest philosophers to develop a utopian state model. Plato's Republic was written in approximately 380 BC. Applying his notions of a just society, Plato claimed to construct an, quote, ideal society through a fictional dialogue between Socrates and others. In fact, what he created is a totalitarian state. Now, speaking of, Eric, the interesting thing is I took a fun in class, in college, I took a fun world literature class where I read the Apology of Socrates as part of the assignments. And I really enjoyed that. But it comes to the fact that Plato usually wrote these pieces where they were dialogues between his teacher Socrates and other people. So getting back to that, so it was these dialogues between Socrates and some other individuals. Now, going forward, and funny thing is, of course, digress a little bit here, one of his main critics of Republic was Plato's own student, Aristotle.
Yep. Exactly.
So
that was ironic myself.
Oh yeah, it is interesting. Get a little bit of light here. Let me make sure I'm reading the correct sections here. Okay, so in a nutshell, there's his main idea, right, was to have a city called an ideal city that would provide only the most basic needs for the citizens: food, shelter, clothing. and shoes. And of course, that meant dividing everybody up into 3 different classes. Now, he prescribed a more perfect city, and that he conceded that would never work. So then he because of the fact that the people would want luxuries and things like that, well, so he came up with this idea for another city that was described as, quote, feverish and luxurious, but so it accommodates human desire. But in truth, what it promotes, back to the book here, is for most the individual's subservience to the state control of private property, health care, the workforce, housing, and more. It establishes a strict class system and uses eugenics, euthanasia, arranged marriages, and of course the ongoing indoctrination of the masses to maintain unity in this, quote, just society. And it has to be, and he prescribes this specifically, that has to be built on a foundation of falsehoods, propaganda, and censorship, which of course we know too well right now, right? So the intention is all around creating this aristocratic ruling class of philosophers known as guardians, who will rule wisely and guide the city. And Eric, we of course know, and he notes here that what's to stop these quote guardians, philosopher kings, from doing whatever they want, ruling however they will. And we know that there's always corruption, and it ends up being, again, a terrible situation for the common people, when what they're prescribing is what's to be best for the common people, right? Yep. So let's see here. So, and then of course, so in this city that he's talking about, the second level of city, they're allowed certain luxuries like, quote, sofas and tables and other furniture, also dainties and perfumes and incense. Now, and then some gold and ivory and sorts of materials can be procured, but the guardians determine who gets what. So, and the main thing is these guardians, and this again goes back to what we see in the world today, not just the United States, but it's that these guardians, these philosopher kings, are a pure race of rulers, bred by the best citizens, right? Especially people that think they're the best citizens. So to do this, to gain buy-in from the people, he has to invent what he literally deems the noble lie, which is a contrivance taught from the earliest age that each person is born of the earth rather than from a mother. Moreover, each individual is said to be born with a particular metal, gold, silver, or bronze, intermingled in his or her body. The metal determines, again, the metal that you're born with in your body, determines the person's status and relative worth to the city. Of course, it's pretty funny. The gold-souled citizens are the guardians. The silver-souled citizens are the auxiliaries, which is the military class. And then the bronze-souled citizens are the proletariat, or the producers, he calls them, and which ends up actually being slaves, right? So let's see here. And of course, so all this is prescribed so that these people all accept, they're given this, quote, noble lie, so that they'll accept their positions and surrender their personal desires to the needs of the city. Bro, does that kind of sound like some common things today?
Oh, absolutely. And what I'll also say, Aaron, is what I find remarkable about Plato's Republic is how those prescriptions for for that society, that perfect society or utopia, how much of that relates to what Marx and Engels proposed in the Communist Manifesto. And I'd like to also mention, and forgive me if I'm moving ahead of what you might be
No, man.
hitting on, is that Marx and Engels also said that in order to institute their their workers' paradise, is that initially it had to be administered by an iron fist, and that once that utopia was established, that then the need for that iron-fisted government would just vanish. Which we know that at no point throughout history has that happened.
Oh, bro, you're bringing up an excellent point. I didn't put this in my notes to read, but in this utopian city, everyone would behave correctly, so there was no need for government, which is funny because what are those philosopher kings, right? The elite. But so now, one of the main things that they control is, of course, the strict regulation of the birth of children and sexual activity. So the first principle, he calls it, and I'm quoting Plato there, the first principle for rulers is, above all else, that there is nothing which the rulers should so anxiously guard, or of which they are to be such good guardians, as the purity of the race. And how they do that is through state-managed sexual activity. Quote, the best, and this is quoting Plato, not Mark Levin, the best of either sex should be united with the best as often, and the inferior with the inferior as seldom as possible. Now these goings on must be kept secret, which the rulers only know. We shall have to invent some ingenious kind of lots, which the less worthy may draw on each occasion of our bringing them together, and then they will accuse their own ill luck and not the rulers. And just one more thing. So, and this starts sounding like a lot of attitudes today too. So, the nuclear family is abolished. Men, women, and children live communally. The children are removed from their mothers soon after birth and raised and educated collectively. The city replaces parents, and their contemporaries become their brothers and sisters.
Well, Aaron, throughout every despotic regime through history and or even theory, it's very important to divide the family, because once if you have loyalty to, say, your parents, or you have protection like all parents towards your children, then therefore that's going to detract from your dedication to the state. So in every type of despotic regime that has been proposed or is in still effect today or in previous history, the abolishment of the nuclear family was paramount. And that's why we should guard against the way that the left sees the family and the way the left sees religion and
a monopoly on education.
Yeah, and definitively, you just look at what's happened in Virginia. The FBI coming after parents because they're concerned about the curriculum and or the indoctrination of their children. Again, that's really, folks should really see that that's where either purposefully these individuals, these current philosopher kings in power in the state, local legislatures and or assemblies, and then of course at the federal level, that's where a lot of this comes from. And they're either unbeknownst to them and or they know fully well that that's the intention.
Well, And Eric, before we lose some of our audience from them thinking that we're reading this as some sort of really that's what's truly going on. No, what we're talking about, we're reading philosophy of government from some of the most ancient philosophers on the planet that we have their writings. And I want to be clear, we're not saying this is verbatim going on. What we're
There's elements.
what we're talking about is the elite attitude, okay, of a ruling class. And although so much in Republic and Leviathan is so far fetched, and none of it will probably ever come to fruition, a lot of it actually is in lighter doses or watered down fashion. But the spirit of the elitism and the central control of everything possible, that's everything that's possible to be centrally controlled by the elite, it of course is real. That's what we're pointing
Yeah,
to.
and again, the elite is not just Democrats.
No.
The majority of the elite and those that believe in these implementations are leftist, not necessarily just Democrats. But there are plenty of Republicans that have aided in this, and some are elitists themselves. I mean,
Oh
there's
yeah.
plenty of Republicans, I think.
The Republicans that run the Senate right now, they're really good examples.
Yeah, and again, we've spoke on this before. An Article 5 Convention of the States, the First Amendment that should ever be taken up should be term limits. Again, I'm repeating myself from the past, but so Aaron, do you have anything else you want me
So
to go ahead and
I
start the
just want to bring us full circle after that. I think a pretty darn interesting commentary on for one thing, checking into that book by Mark Levin. It's a really good survey of the opposing philosophies of freedom versus administrative tyranny. Now, but the key is we're tying this into the elite that we deal with today and the elite that we're going to talk about that are proposing this 28th Amendment. Why don't you go ahead and take it, brother?
Okay. So, of course, this was published June 8th of 2023 this year. And so just reading from the text off of the California or the governor's office.
Mm-hmm.
Governor Newsom proposes historic 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution to end America's gun violence crisis, which, just in that title, it shows where their thought process is, because you can't end, gun violence, especially through these types of controls. Principles of proposed 28th Amendment broadly supported by American public and gun owners. I mean, unless people are just blind or just completely ignorant, I don't know a lot of gun owners that want to support this. So, Sacramento, today, Governor Gavin Newsom proposed the 28th Amendment to the United States Constitution to enshrine fundamental, broadly supported gun safety measures into law, while leaving the Second Amendment unchanged and respecting America's gun owning tradition, which is garbage for what he wants to implement. The governor's proposal guarantees common sense constitutional protections and gun safety measures that Democrats, Republicans, and independent voters, and gun owners overwhelmingly support. Again, it's false. It's completely false, including universal background checks, raising the firearms purchase age to 21, instituting a firearm purchase waiting period, and barring the civilian purchase of assault weapons. That's the big one to them. They don't like civilians having those weapons, and I'll hit on those again here in a second. Our ability to make a more perfect union is literally written into the Constitution, said Governor Gavin Newsom. So today I'm proposing the 28th Amendment to the Constitution to do just that. The 28th Amendment will enshrine in the Constitution common sense gun safety measures that Democrats, Republicans, independents, and gun owners overwhelmingly support. I guess that was repeated twice, so forgive me, while leaving the Second Amendment unchanged and respecting Americans' gun owning tradition. So, just reiterating these in summary, what it proposes is raising the federal minimum age to purchase a firearm from 18 to 21. So, if you can go to war and serve your nation with an M4 and pistol strapped to your side against, our enemies, but back in the United States, you don't have the right to own firearms. Mandating universal background checks to prevent truly dangerous people from purchasing a gun that could be used in a crime. I mean, we know that's impossible too. Criminals aren't going out and buying guns from stores the majority of the time. Instituting a reasonable waiting period for all gun purchases and barring civilian purchase of assault weapons that serve no other purpose than to kill as many people as possible in short amount of time, weapons of war our nation's founders never foresaw. But they just happen to have the most capable assault weapon or capable military rifle of the time. Again, this is something that they use.
The musket was the M4 of the day. That they can't wrap their heads around that. And as if the founding fathers, a lot of them were inventors, couldn't foresee technology improvements in firearms.
Yep, exactly. So, additionally, the 28th Amendment will affirm Congress and states and local governments can enact additional common sense gun safety regulations that save lives. So that kind of, threw a red flag in my mind. Essentially, it sounds to me like they're saying, well, they're going to add a clause in there that basically said, hey, states and local governments can continue to add whatever gun safety measures they feel necessary and enshrine it in an amendment. So which would eviscerate the Second Amendment, right? Which we know what this really about. So I want to make a note of this, and folks, a lot of our audience members, the majority of them, of course, are all smart individuals. But just to reiterate, the passage of this amendment would take a convention of the states. Or go ahead.
No, you keep going. I have something to interject in there. Keep going. I'm just perking up.
So I'll just skip ahead to it right now. So this is Article 5, or at least the important clauses. So this is Article 5 of the Constitution. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes. As part of this Constitution, when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress. So again, it starts with 2/3 of Congress to call the convention, which we know they're not going to do. They haven't done it since the 27th Amendment was ratified. But more importantly, the only real way to do it right now, in my opinion, and this is why Mark Levin's book, to talk about Mark Levin again, his Liberty Amendments book proposed is the second portion of Article 5, and that's a states convention, which takes 2/3, which is 34 states. And then if the states elect to ratify it will take 3/4, which is 38 states. So that's a tall order. So I was going to point out the likelihood that there would even be remote support for this 28th Amendment. Maybe I'm wrong. I guess I should digress a second and really look what's the possibility there.
Yeah, I doubt very seriously. Of course, this is a tall order, but it's plain politics. Gavin Newsom, I believe, is at some point going to run for president. He knows this is near impossible, but it's if it's impossible now, here's the deal. Tyrannical people and the left, let's just say, have been doing the long game for thousands of years, right?
Absolutely.
If it's proposed now, whenever they have the power to do it, or they have the majorities to do it, let's say far in the future, they're going to do something like this. But Eric, what I wanted to say is that what Gavin Newsom is proposing is the second method you just listed in Article 5. And what's hilarious, here's the kicker, bro. When you're calling a constitutional convention to propose amendments, all amendments at that point are on the table. Whatever amendments can be proposed, they'll be proposed.
Yep, absolutely.
I don't know if you saw the actual proposal, but it says that the only amendment that would be considered at this convention, this constitutional convention of the state legislatures, is this amendment.
Yeah, I did read that.
I found that so funny.
Yeah, again, that's
so we're going to set up. We're going to propose this, showing a little bit of faux reverence to the Constitution. We're gonna propose this constitutional remedy to this gun violence problem, so called.
Yeah, because they're afraid of what very liberty-minded amendments like term limits for Congress, like a balanced budget amendment, like making any, and I'm forgetting the exact monetary value, but specific bills that are beyond a certain amount have to be tabled for 6 months or more. Forgive me, I don't have the book in front of me, but again, tabled long enough for the American people to see what they're really about before they're actually voted on. So yeah, that is, I do remember that. That's very rich that they would try to say that. And how do they do that?
We're gonna use this. We're gonna use this constitutional remedy, but we're gonna limit this remedy to what we want to have a convention on, which, I mean, of course, completely unprecedented. But
yeah. Well, again, kind of closing this point is that, we do have individuals that, number one, are extremely wealthy. They live in opulence. They do believe that they are morally superior to us, to conservatives especially, but morally superior to the in their eyes the proletariat, and that they feel they know what's best, and they're going to try to. It's like I like what Victor Davis Hanson, his term that he used recently was Jacobins. In the era of the French Revolution, very radical extremist, at that point. So yeah, it's pretty amazing what we see right now. Unfortunately, we really need to get the American people back into understanding what their constitutional rights are, and to try to protect them.
Well, and it needs to be noted that central power, those that favor central power and controlling as much as possible, leftists, whatever you want to call them, statists, um, bureaucrats, they certainly control the majority of every power structure in this country. That is a fact. That is inarguable. From the media, Facebook, Instagram, all of it is controlled by them. And those,
And then every large city,
mm-hmm,
they Washington D.C., just the local municipality of Washington D.C. is completely controlled by these philosopher kings and leftists, and the biggest cities all look at education system, the board, so on and so forth.
So I said that, and we can move on from this particular topic, is that the only hope we have is the Supreme Court right now when it comes to these major issues, and that's a slim margin too. We've got John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett both siding against our freedoms all the flipping time. But
and that's why I think that ultimately we have to continue to. I should have came with how many states we currently have that have actually voted in their state legislatures. It's not what we need. It's getting closer, but to really remedy it, the Supreme Court, I think, is still a temporary solution, but it's only an election away from turning a majority, unfortunately.
Well, and if we didn't have specifically the case of Bruin, that we are, let's get positive about this, because of what we have in the Supreme Court, and specifically the Bruin decision, we have been winning and kicking butt on protecting and regaining the protections that we have under the Second Amendment, of course. And let's be very clear, not granted by our government, but preceding any government entity. It's literally God-given rights. And I'll just say this, Eric, if you don't have a right to control your own method of self-defense, if you're dead, what does any other right matter? What does any other right matter? So,
yep, exactly. Well, hey, so we are going to move on to, this is a gear and mindset show. So we're going to get into a little bit of mindset, but also, what unfortunately was also a tragedy, July 14th, and that was the Fargo, North Dakota Police Department. Some police officers were ambushed by an evil individual, and I'm sure, Aaron, you've had an opportunity to see that video.
Yes, I have, and let me just say on the outset of this, I had zero knowledge of this event until you sent this to me today, I believe, or yesterday, whenever you sent. I had no idea. That's a problem.
Yeah, and Aaron, I don't know specifically why. I think some of it is that it doesn't meet the current media narrative as it relates to, mass shootings, to use their term, or active shooter events. Because unfortunately, it ended in a tragedy where a young police officer lost his life, and his name is Jake Wallin. He was only 23 years old.
Wow.
So prayers to, of course, him and his family. It's a tragedy when, we lose anyone, but it's also, very, law enforcement has been taking it rough the last few years. And a lot of the mentality towards police officers. And I might argue that it's very possible that this ambush took place because of some of the mentality towards law enforcement. But Aaron, I'll go ahead and read a little bit from this article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to read some highlights. But anyway, this came from an AP story in CBS on July 22nd, 2023. And so essentially the headline, man who ambushed Fargo officers searched, kill fast, area events where where there are crowds, officials say. Police identified the deceased officer as Jake Wallin, which we stated 23, in a Saturday news release. Officers Andrew Dottis and Tyler Hawes both sustained gunshot wounds, according to the release. So the gentleman's name, which I debated on whether or not I was going to name him, but I'm going to go ahead and read his name throughout this because, sometimes it's important to know what we're dealing with. Bearcat was shot by officer, this stud, Zachary Robinson. And there's more about that. And I think I'd like to, do a little commentary on what I reviewed in the video here in a second too. But carrying on from the article, the heavily armed man who ambushed Fargo police officers investigating a fender bender last week likely had a bigger and bloodier attack in mind, with at least 2 fairs taking place at the time in and around North Dakota's largest city, authorities said Friday. Mohammed Bearcat killed 1 officer and wounded 2 others and a bystander before a 4th officer shot and killed him, ending the attack. Over the past 5 years, Bearcat, 37, searched the internet for terms including kill fast, explosive ammo, incendiary rounds, and mass shooting events, State Attorney General Drew Wrigley said Friday during a news conference in Fargo, a city of about 125,000 people, pretty decent sized city. But perhaps the most chilling search was for, quote, area events where there are crowds, which on July 13th brought up a news article with the headline, Thousands Enjoy First Day of Downtown Fargo Street Fair. Had Officer Zach Robinson not killed Bearcat, authorities said they shudder to think of how much worse the attack might have been. After driving by the fender bender and, seeing the video and hearing this description, it's just evident, this dude was an evil person. Bearcat pulled into an adjacent parking lot to watch from his parked car, Wrigley said. He said Bearcat's car was loaded with guns, a homemade grenade, more than 1,800 rounds of ammunition, 3 largest containers full of gasoline, plus 2 propane tanks, one completely filled and the other half filled, not with propane, but with an explosive material concocted at home, purchased lawfully, which they mean, and later in the article says it was tannerite or likely tannerite. So let me make a point about that. So again, this is also possibly why it doesn't meet the narrative, because he had other means of creating carnage. Now, granted, he needed a high velocity round to set off that tannerite. But I mean, you could use a deer rifle, for that or what have you. But the point is that could be why, they're not. That's not. I haven't seen a lot of it on the news. I did see that CNN, they brought up the big point that the rifle had a binary trigger, which you can kind of hear the cyclic rate. It probably, it's very possible, that'll certainly give the ATF more ammunition for their current rule. So Robinson, who was badly outgunned, this is the police officer, but was the only officer at the scene who hadn't been shot, engaged Bearcat in a 2-minute shootout. It ended with Robinson shooting and killing Bearcat as bystanders crouched nearby. So, I just want to break, I was going to read a little more of this, but I don't think it's necessary. I will say this. I like what the Attorney General said. He said that Robinson, he described him as the last man standing in the blue line at that moment, which is true. And that young man was a stud. you could tell that he was very. I mean, he's got rifle rounds coming towards him, and he just saw several of his partners shot. So you could hear the emotion in his voice. But and I happened to I tried to bring the video back and forth, but one of the things that I noted, number one, it looks to be about, my guess would be between 20 and 17, 15 yards that he engaged this person. And you can tell that, the police officers that were hit, including the one that was deceased, that, they were only about maybe 10 yards away from him when he opened fire from his vehicle. So you can see that he is seated in his vehicle. And, I have to guess that he didn't have his rifle up. So, these police officers just probably, if they observed him, they just saw a person sitting in the car. And then when they got
Kind of a
close enough,
confirmation bias situation.
yeah. And I mean, of course, at that point, he opened fire, with his, and the police officer says that he had originally said it was an AK-47, but I think it was in fact an AR. So, but yeah, and I counted his first engagement, his first shots fired, because and I'll put the video in the show notes as well for folks that want to see it, if they want to see it, where I don't think this person knew that police officer was on the other side of the car, or maybe he did. And, I'm not sure. It seemed to me like his focus was on the police officers that were fairly close to him. And so when Robinson started engaging him, he had just exited his vehicle, and then the officer starts shooting at him, and he runs around the backside of his car. And the police officer, kind of, lack of a better term, sliced the pie a little bit around the car and got several other shots. But in that engagement, he had first shot 4, and then he shoots 11, gets a little closer. He starts going around the other side of the vehicle, shoots 3 more. That equals 18 rounds. So it's probably a 17, and he reloads. And he tries to get a better shot on this on Bearcat. And I liked what he did at this point, because he kept trying to grab the rifle and point it back at him, so he engaged him more. But then Robinson decided to flank around the right in the backside of the car, and that's when he got a really good angle on this evil perp and took him out. So,
yeah,
go ahead.
What I like seeing was, like you said, this officer, he was obviously emotional, and like you said, he was taken aback and he was scared, I'm sure. But man, he went towards that guy. He put some rounds on, but he went towards that guy and took care of business doing his job.
Yeah, he didn't get pinned down behind that vehicle, which we know vehicles become, sponges for rounds. So, I mean, he closed on the enemy, which is in many cases what's necessary. He closed in. He destroyed.
He took a little bit of A-frame time there, right? But then he moved out, and you could tell he was was going to do his job.
Yep. And fire and maneuver tactics, man, using the flank. I mean, I think he did an excellent job tactically. And, he did the job, and he did it well. And initially against a rifle.
And without cover.
Yep. So, yeah, man, I shout out to Officer Robinson. Thank you for protecting your society. And yes, great on you, buddy. We really appreciate what you, men and women in uniform, do to protect us. So thank you. Well, Aaron, we're sitting on, our normal, hour and a half. Man, you got anything jovial to leave us with?
Well, I'll just say real quick about this again. It is wild. This should have been major national news,
Yeah,
but it was
yeah,
literally just it obviously was purposely ignored.
yeah. Aaron, I'm glad you drove that home, because that was the sole reason why I wanted to bring this up. Well, number one is to highlight this young officer's, um,
Performance.
doing the business and his performance, and also to a tribute to this young officer, Jake Wallin. And Aaron, I forgot about this piece. I'm glad we're still on it a little bit, but I just wanted to mention this young officer, again, 23. He served in Iraq and Afghanistan
Mm.
with the Minnesota Army National Guard, and to my understanding, he and this other officer, Aaron, were still in training. So they were, I guess what is it? It's in their FTO. They're in their field training um, aspect of their training. Some of our buddies that are police officers probably, come on, Eric, get it together. However long it is, a year or so, that they're in this field training. These young officers that got shot, at least two of them were in that, and this young gentleman, just started this job. So
Well, so
again, may he rest in peace.
amen. Well, the point being is that this was a terrorist attack that was thwarted.
Oh yeah,
And
a good guy with a gun is a good guy, a cop with a gun.
so it's
Yep.
it's it's ignored, but really it's infuriating that
Well, and Aaron, and I keep going back to stuff that I intended to read. Here's something that's damning. So he had, however, been reported to something called the Guardian Threat Tracking System.
mhm,
The FBI routinely opens. Now listen to this, Aaron. This section here. FBI routinely opens what it refers to internally as assessments, the lowest level, least intrusive, and most elementary stage of terrorism related inquiry when it receives unconfirmed information about potentially suspicious behavior. And I'm just going to say right now, or I'll just say, what does that sound like to you? That paragraph there. And if you're thinking what I'm thinking, if not, I'll just tell you what I'm thinking.
let me know
Do,
what
do
you're
you
thinking, bro.
so Aaron, what that sounds like to me is a paragraph provided by the FBI to say, to try to wash their hands of the fact that they knew about this person. So basically, to try to push away
He was a
ownership of it.
low level on their radar, but not to the level that they were concerned enough to go knock on doors,
Yep.
etc. Is that what you're saying?
And to be, I got, with the current federal, I mean, well, federal, it is federal, the leadership in the FBI, clearly there's major problems there. The local people,
Yeah.
no doubt there is a heavy percentage of them that are just great people. So I'm not saying that they should have known, or I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
trying to place
That's
blame.
very hard to say after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah. There's all kinds of things that can happen. And just like in this instance, these young cops were ambushed. People going, why didn't they see them? Man, an ambush is an ambush. We have the most incredible snake eaters with the most awesome training. Tier one operators get ambushed by farmers with AKs, so it can happen to anybody. So, yeah, to me, it's, we're at the end. It's hard to end with, kind of a somber note, but, a lot of this is about mindset. We got to keep our heads into the game, to where we, like William April says, they are not us. Some of the reasons why we talk about some of these horrible tragedies with evil people that want to commit evil is that we got to keep reminding ourselves while we're doing what we're doing, you know? And again, I think it's also important to note that even though this is like one of the most important things in our lives is being prepared and helping others as best we can, this isn't the only thing we spend our time thinking about. you
Mm-mm.
know and some individual that listen to our show, it's not, I mean, we have so many very, very delightful and fun and non-tactical things in our lives. I just want to encourage people to understand that it's not always doom and gloom. We still are free in this nation, and um
Yeah, I don't know of a better place to live still. So
absolutely. Well, man,
that, that that's that
I'm extremely.
that's why we get so upset about the constant incremental Fabian incrementalism, right? Changes and reductions of our freedoms, and it's not new. It's
No,
been
Aaron,
go-
and I
it's
was gonna
been going
say,
on.
yeah,
It's been going on since this republic started.
yeah, and Aaron, it's happened through antiquity, and Aaron, it is actually the state of man,
Yes, it is.
right? Um,
Yes, under tyrannical rule is the state of man. Yes, in
yeah,
history.
so I mean, we all societies eventually devolve into, a tyrannical state of some sort. And, I'm not saying we're there completely right now. I say that there is a lot of control in our lives. There's a lot of post-constitutional behavior in our current governments. And I'm speaking of the local, the state, and the federal. Just that, we got to be mindful of that and try to guard against it. But yes, it is absolutely this, where this incrementalism is leading is unfortunately the state of man. So it's just,
It's the
we
same
got
thing
to
as
be vigilant and guard against it.
it's almost like chaos theory in science, right? Without order, there's chaos. In the human condition, there will, and this is, I'll say this, and bro, we can let our guests go. But those that don't understand what we do, our friends that go, what are you so scared of? uh, because they're not scared, they're not concerned. They think the odds of something happening to them is so low, which we know, of course, that is not the case. Bare minimum, people have a 40% chance of being a victim of a Part 1 crime in their lifetime. They have I'm throwing out numbers, but it's roughly 40% at least one, or about 30% two. It goes down, but there are multiple times throughout your life that you have the odds of being the victim
And
of
can I say,
assault,
yep, go ahead.
robbery, murder, rape. Okay.
And
There has always been evil people that want to do evil things, and violence is their language. It is not a problem for them to use violence. It's just a tool to them to get what they want. So we prepare for that.
yep, absolutely. And what I like to say when I've been asked that question before, and my response is, I'm not afraid of anything.
Mm-mm.
I and I know you feel the same way. We just choose to prepare ourselves to be able to deal with it, you know?
Well, and what I was meaning to say, and I kind of got sidetracked a smidge, is that just like there are evil people down the street that will harm us or kill us for a $40 cell phone, there will always be people that are going to use their station in life to subjugate other people. It is it is as real as gravity. and it will
Axiomatic.
never end. Yes, it is as axiomatic as gravity. And like you said, and I'll second what you're saying, bro, and then let you go, is that it's amazing the people that do think, what are you afraid of? Actually, I'm not. There are things that I would say that I'm afraid of, but it actually has nothing to do with someone harming me. Because I'm more prepared than the normal person. Am I a snake eater? By no means. I'm an accountant, man. I've got some JIT skills and I can run a pistol fairly well. But the main thing is that I'm doing my best to prepare, and it makes me less concerned and less scared. I enjoy being prepared. So
Same
on
here,
that,
buddy.
well, bro, get some relief from the heat. I look forward to you being able to be home. And bro, I will talk to you later.
All right, buddy. Have a good one.
You too.
Talk soon.